Hey guys, you're watching Couch Surfing here with Metal Mass. We've got a very special guest with us right now. Chris.
Hey!
Chris, how you doing?
I'm good, bro. How are you?
Not too bad. Mountain Wizard, difficult.
That's us, man.
Awesome band.
Thank you, bro. Thank you.
Let's have a chat about the band.
Absolutely,
How
man.
did this band all get together? How did this band all form?
Yeah, so a bit of a tale. Mount was Death Cult. So pretty much all started, I think 2018, 2019 now. Myself and our drummer Lockie, we've been mates for years and years and years, and we always kind of jammed on and off.
Yeah.
But jammed on and off, mates, in different bands and doing different things.
Yep.
And we never really had like stuff for like our own music, if that made sense.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the time, I actually bought some new gear. I bought from Amp Nerds or whatever. I bought like an 800 Marshall JCM, and we're like just having some jams with it, trying it out, and like really digging how it sounded. And we just started coming up with like riffs, and we're like, oh man, there's some like ideas here. Like we should keep playing.
Yeah, sure.
And then next thing you know, we had like a bunch of ideas to the point where okay, now kind of getting songs. Let's do something. Let's try to get something happening. And it was like the first kind of jams were like in our mate's pool house, like next to like this pool. They had this like big like 50-meter pool, and so we would just go over there. So we could jam whenever we wanted.
Yeah, cool.
And trying to find a bass player. And in previous projects sometimes it was hard to find members, and we were just chucking up little clips and things like that on our social media. And there's a few people that were keen. And then the first person that actually had come play was Tony, who's still our bass player. And he was local as well, and so this would be sweet. We know he's a good bass player, but we didn't really know him that well personally. And then he came and had a jam, and it was kind of like, man, this works.
Yeah.
Like, so next thing you know, we had obviously bass, guitar, drums, and no real we were writing our own stuff. There was obviously influences and whatever, but it was fairly free form, just figuring it out, and I kind of had a vision for what I wanted it to be.
Yep.
And then so we had a kind of bunch of tracks, had a bunch of demos and things like that worked out. But at this stage, it was all instrumental. We had I don't really do vocals, I try. I do a couple of yells, bro.
That's right. Yeah.
But yeah, so we had me, Lockie, and Tony had a few songs, had a bunch of stuff demoed, and I was actually going into the city. I think I was going to see Perturbator. If you're familiar with Perturbator.
I know Perturbator,
Yeah. I was going to see Perturbator with Jenny, who actually is Tony's sister.
Yep.
Right? Who I'd known for years and years and years and years, since I was like 12, 13. Like, I know it forever.
Jesus.
She was friends with my family and everything, and so there was a connection there already.
Yep.
And her now husband, but obviously boyfriend at the time, JJ was vocalist in some other bands, more like hardcore bands, post-hardcore bands, that type of thing. And I was showing Jenny some of the demos, and he was like, what the fuck is this kind of thing? And I'm like, oh, they're just some demos, man,
Yep.
And he was like, I want to do this, man. Like, I want to have a crack, kind of thing. And at the time, I was kind of like, I don't know, man.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if this is the vibe for the music. I don't know if it's gonna work.
Yeah.
And he's like putting his hand up, going, no, I want to do it. I want to have give it a crack, because it's a bit different from what he was doing previously. So I was like, I don't know if that'll work. And then so he came around a jam, and it was kind of like first jam. We were all kind of looking at each other, going, yeah, this is gonna work. Like,
it just glued.
Exactly.
It was amazing how those things work.
It was just straight away, and also Tony, now is JJ's married to his sister, so it's a very kind of tight knit, bit of a family band in some ways. You know what I mean? Which is cool. We all get on really well, and it's made things really easy for us that way. Some bands are looking for members, and it can be a real slog to try to figure it out.
That's true.
But yeah, that's kind of how it came together originally, I guess. Yeah.
So let's talk about the main influences behind the band. So
Sure,
you're talking about the influences before, but like, what are the main influences behind the band's sound?
I would say like at the start, being that it was kind of just written with guitars and drums and us figuring things out.
Yeah.
Like we're talking before we're filming.
Yeah.
I was always got a Western Sydney hardcore kid. And, had my formative years. You made your typical kind of metal stuff everyone listens to. Like I think like System of a Down was the gateway band for me.
Yeah. Gateway band for a lot.
Exactly, man. But as the years went on, I kind of started getting into more of that kind of like doom and stoner and post rock and post metal and that side of things. And I really love bands like Russian Circles, and like Yob and like Old Man Gloom, Isis, those types of bands. And so it wasn't like really wanting it to be like that, but that was kind of just naturally seeping into it. Like I love the atmospheric, like Cult of Luna bands like that. Those kinds of vibes, and also some of that more like black and hardcore. Type of vibe like Cult Leader, bands like that.
Yeah, definitely.
That was kind of the idea behind the time was I just wanted to write like really atmospheric, sludgy, massive kind of tracks. Just and raw. Not like super modern. And really take people on a journey. I suppose as cliche as that sounds.
Yeah, sure.
That was always kind of the vision for it, but then obviously once we started writing more, everyone's kind of brought their own influences to it.
Absolutely.
And it hasn't been like we are this type of band. So as JJ came in and he had his vocal styles and whatnot, he kind of felt like he had a lot of freedom to do things that maybe he wasn't doing before or didn't feel like it would fit before with what he was doing.
But moving outside the box, like and just experimenting and saying, this might work.
Exactly, bro. Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of added a lot of that more, like I said, maybe a little bit of that kind of hardcore, black and hardcore, metalcore element, which is kind of seeps underneath. But I would still always see us more of a like a post metal, kind of progressive, kind of sludge band in my mind.
Absolutely. Let's talk about your favourite show you've done. Look, you guys have played a few shows. From there, it's only started a few years ago. You have played a lot of shows.
Thanks, man.
And you've just exploded. I'm sure there's one show that may stand out the most for you.
Oh man, I would say like it's so hard to say one show. I would say the best experience we had playing together as a band would have been Blacken. In the Northern Territory.
Oh yeah, that would have been so good.
It was all, and that was more like I would say like just the whole experience of the festival. And that week together with so many mates, and like the lineup was insanely good, man. And it was for those that don't know Blacken or haven't been, it's a festival run by the Black Reef out at Ross River Resort, so Northern Territory. It's about an hour and a half out of Alice Springs, but it's the only, for me, I think, like, only real, like, metal pilgrimage in Australia. Like, heart of the country, no reception, absolutely beautiful atmosphere, and it's just the best, man. So I would say that would be my favourite show we've played, just because of the whole experience. As far as, like, our own, maybe, like, favourite show as far as just the way it went and the response, I really, really liked... our launch for the last single, Initiation, in the Vanguard that we did. It was just an awesome night, man. It was a great turnout. It was really good vibe on the night. The lineup was killer. And that was just one of those gigs where like you could just feel building up to it. There was a lot of excitement around it, and it was just absolutely like trance. It was the best, man.
Look, I suppose you want to go into full detail now because you've got a lot of shows coming up.
Bro.
But what are the plans for the rest of the year? You're obviously about to hit some big shows coming up. You're got international support coming out, which is good.
Man. So for the rest of this year, we're just about to put out a new single. Called Orbital, which comes out in a couple of weeks. Which is a bit different. It's a bit more like the post-metal, I think it's like an 8.5 minute track.
8.5 minute track?
Yes.
Nice. That's real post-metal.
Exactly, man. It's a bit of a journey. So we're about to put that out, and then in support of that, we're doing like an East Coast run.
Cool.
As you mentioned, the first kind of show just before the tour starts is with the Danish band called Hexus. Which a lot of people that listen to this will probably be familiar with.
They've been out there before, so a couple years ago. 5
or 6 years ago. I missed them on that tour like just, so when they actually announced they're coming out again, I'm like, I have to see them this time. And then thankfully we got the opportunity to be on the lineup, so I was super stoked. Actually, they were like, when we first started, and also like influencers and whatnot, it was kind of like, who are the bands we'd love to play with someday? And that was like very high up there, like we'd love to play Hexus.
So look at this, you have the opportunity now, you're supporting them.
It's crazy, it's really cool, man. Like, and that's the first International Support of the Year, so
Yep.
that's going to be cool.
Cool.
Then after that, we're going down to Canberra for Sunburn,
Yep.
which is like a 2-day, like 40 band, like stoner, like psych metal kind of
Cool.
festival. Which, if you haven't been to that before, it's fucking killer.
Get to it.
Yeah, so that's going to be great. And then, then they pick out 12 to 15 dates. So doing like Queensland, a bunch of New South Wales dates, and then Victoria. And then after that, our record is like done essentially, and so we'll start getting everything ready for the record release and all the fun that's around that.
Yeah.
And hopefully kick off on another tour.
Yeah, cool.
Towards the end of the year. That's the plan anyway.
Jeez, busy. Talk about busy.
Very busy, man.
But you know, after the last couple of years too, where everything's been happening with the whole lockdown and all that crap, it's sent a lot of bands back. Did it affect you guys at all with the lockdown?
Oh man, that's an interesting question. Like, I think, obviously everyone had their own experience of it, and a lot of things were shit over the last few years, everything happened. But I feel like as difficult as it was for everyone, as far as shows not being able to go out and do stuff, when things started opening up again, it was really good to see that obviously bands that are more like a local underground level, I suppose. Were the first ones that were really able to get out there and start doing things.
Yeah.
And people were hungry for shows too.
Yeah.
So in that period, we did the whole thing where we were playing shows to seated audiences, which is which is pretty strange.
That would be a big experience.
Yeah, when you're playing heavy music like ours.
Yeah.
But we had a really really good 2022.
Yeah.
We went pretty much everywhere apart from WA.
Yep.
A bunch of festivals. We did Big Sound.
Yeah, cool.
Obviously, I mentioned before Blacken. And,
Yep.
a bunch of other ones like Thrashville and things like that. So,
Nice. Yeah.
man, like it's just like as soon as things kind of started going again.
Then it was all back to normal,
Absolutely,
back to business. So if people want to contact the band to find more about you guys, you're obviously on Facebook.
Yeah.
Plug away at the socials.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it is a mouthful, but Mountain Wizard Death Cult is the handle on Insta and Facebook. They're the main ones. We don't do TikTok. We're too old. maybe one day.
That's it. I just want to ask you lastly, how did this name come up? It's a really cool name.
Thanks, bro.
Lastly about this.
Some people think it might be like a Wu-Tang meme generator.
Yeah, that's
like
right. When you type it in,
No, so that one,
funny,
it's funny. At the start, we used to kind of keep it close to our chest, like
yeah.
where the name came from, because it keep it a bit, ambiguous or whatever.
Yeah.
But JJ actually came up with the name.
Yeah, cool.
And it was he actually got the inspiration from a podcast, which I won't name. But it's loosely based around the Om Shinrikyo, I believe it is, which was like a Japanese doomsday cult. And you can do some research on that. It's super, super interesting as far as how everything that happened there. But in this podcast, they talked about, wouldn't it be a great prog name to be like Mountain Wizards or Cult of the Mountain Wizards or something like that. And then he came up with the name. I had no idea. Like, man, names are not my thing.
I know, yeah.
I find it so difficult to name anything. And he was like, Mountain Wizard Death Cult, Mountain Wizard Death Cult. And I was like super reluctant at the start. I'm like, no, man, it's a pretty long name. Like, it's a mouthful.
It is a bit mouthful.
But yeah, it was just like, it just stuck.
Yeah.
There was nothing else. Like that just, it made sense as well with the music.
That's true.
It really did fit the vibe. And so we ran with it obviously to start, and
it's just gone from there.
That's who we are, man. That was Death Cult.
Chris, thank you so much for doing this interview. Make sure you check these guys out. Absolutely.
Awesome, brother. Thank you so much.
You too, bud.